back again to do next video, the next part to the video that we did yesterday. So yesterday was about how we respond to stress. Okay, so we saw some different types of psychological conflicts, and we learned a little bit about what we do in response to stress, what stress is. Today, I want to quickly move to strategies to deal with stress. Now, there was a lot of other categories that we could have talked about, but I think for this time, it's really important that I give you some actual things that you can use as soon as you're done with this video. So throughout this video, I'll have some prompts and questions for you. And so let us begin. All right. So the way that I've done this is there's 4 different categories of stress. Or excuse me, of stress response, of how we can respond to stress. So we have cognitive strategies. It's all in your head. So we're going to talk about some of the mental things that we can do to deal with stress. Emotional strategies. So this is reaching out and learning ways to get help with your emotions. Behavioral strategies. So we're going to look at some ways that you can do some different behaviors or behavior modification that might help you deal with stress. And then finally, we'll look at physical strategies. And it says work it out because obviously part of that will be exercise. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. All right, so the first of these cognitive strategies, and if you remember yesterday, we talked about what we do. It's that primary appraisal and the secondary appraisal. Now, if we were in class, I would say, can someone tell me what a primary appraisal was? But we are not in class, so for now, I'll just remind you that it's initially figuring out, okay, is this a threat to me? What level of a threat is it? And then deciding how you're going to respond to that threat. So, what you can actually do to cope or to deal with that is you can do a reappraisal. All right. So, this can be where you say, I have it here. So, the example that I've given is about school closure. So you can see it says, okay, maybe school closing gives me a chance to get healthy and have a better relationship with my parents. So we can initially say, oh my goodness, this school closure has been catastrophic, it's been horrible. But maybe you reappraise that and say, okay, here's the situation, but what are some positives from this? What are some ways that I can look at this a different way and maybe it's not as disruptive, or there's some opportunities there for me to take advantage of this time. So that's just one way to kind of soften the cognitive blow that you take from whatever that stressor or stress is. So that's one easy thing that you can do, and you can say, all right, let me look at this again. And is my initial response appropriate, or will it cause more stress? Right? Ignore. So ignore is always an option. This is usually if it's a low risk and low disruption stressor. Okay, so it might be a little bit annoying, but it's not significant enough for a full response. And the question is that I would think about is, can you handle not reacting? I have an example, and this happened like a couple weeks ago in class. I think it was sixth period. Yeah, it was sixth period. So I was teaching. There's me, yay, teaching. And there's my wonderful students. And this guy walks in and he's like, hey, Mr. Frost, I think, sorry, there's a little black thing on my screen. He was like, Mr. Frost, I think that you left something outside. And it was the doormat. So you guys know the doormat that comes into my classroom. He had it up in the air and was like, I think you left this outside. Now, in that moment, I could have completely got really upset at him and yelled at him and called admin and all these types of things. But for me, it was better for me to just let that moment go, laugh it off, and continue than to create a bigger distraction. And it turns out I was right. He left, and my class stayed focused, and we got right back engaged. That could have, right? In my appraisal, I could have said, no, this is a huge threat to me. This is going to cause me so much stress. I have to deal with this kid right now. But then that would have taken away from instructional time and it would have made a bigger distraction. So by ignoring him, essentially, I was actually able to lower my stress level because it would have got higher having to deal with all of the other stuff that would have came if I wanted to address it or discipline him in some way. So that's a good example of when to use ignore. I think teachers do this a lot. Small little distractions distractions that happen in the classroom, we just kind of tend to brush them off, and that does help us manage our stress level a little bit. So that's a good example of when you should use something like ignore. All right. So at the top, I'll talk about this in a second, but it's a little prompt that I want to give you. So if we think about problem solve, okay, everyone says be a problem solver. We want students to be problem solvers, but there actually is a constructed way that we can do that. And so in psychology, we think about a schema. All right, so I'm going to give you a new vocab word. And a schema is a pattern of thought or behavior that organizes categories of information and the relationships among them. So we're building a structure and a system to categorize information. All right. So if you're thinking about a specific method that you're going to use to address something, right? If you see down below, there's those 3 steps that I'm suggesting for dealing with that. A is to identify the problem. Okay. Do I actually know what the problem is? What is the problem, right? B is exploring possible strategies. You can literally do this on a piece of paper. I would highly suggest when you have an issue, writing this out. If we try to think about it, there's too much going on, there's too much kind of fuzz in our brain happening. Try to slow down and write it out, okay? List all the possible strategies. And then finally, make a plan and take the action, okay? Sometimes when we try to problem solve, we skip to step 3. We skip to C. We're like, this is what I'm gonna do, and this is how I'm gonna deal with it. We haven't even thought about, okay, what truly is the issue? What truly are all of my options for strategies? We just get so upset or so sad, or right, we rush to our emotion and then we act on it immediately. And it takes some time to actually stop yourself and figure out, okay, can I identify this? Can I think about all these options? And then can I plan to take action? That is a good way to do that, to set up a schema, okay, to set up a pattern of thought. So maybe your schema is that every time you encounter a problem, you're going to stop and you're going to use your phone and the notes app and you're going to work that way. Okay, you can teach your brain that that is how we approach this thing. Okay, that's how we build relationships between issues and solutions. All right. So a question that's posed there that you could just think about is, how do you think a schema can help you respond to a problem? And then if we look up top, I think I'm pointing. Well, I'll move my head there so my finger actually points right there. I want you to pause the video if you're with someone and ask your parents, siblings, or guardians about the ways that they solve problems. Okay. Try to figure out what is it that they do when they're trying to solve a problem. See if they have a system like this, or if they just kind of go off their gut, whatever the case might be. Either way is fine, but excuse me. The proven way is these 3 steps over here. That is a really good research backed way to get the results that you might want. All right, cognitive restructuring. In other words, changing your perspective, right? Part of this is you have to address what assumptions or immediate responses you have to something. Okay. It may be that a certain type of thing that someone does automatically makes you mad. And because it just instantly makes you mad, and you haven't truly figured out why it makes you mad, you just know it does. You can choose to not live in that anger and say, okay, why am I really bothered by this? What truly is it about this thing that is causing me sadness, that is causing me anger, that is causing me stress? One of the best things that we can do for ourselves, mental health wise, is to always slow down and figure out what exactly the issue is, because there's so many things that are happening to us in a day and we're taking in so much information. Sometimes we can lose sight of what the real issue is, and we don't know what the issue is, you can't find a solution. So one of the things you can do is kind of shift your perspective to see that problem as a challenge rather than a threat. Okay, so the example I have is, let me blow myself up a little bit. An example that I have is, there's 2 students who talk all the time in my class. And I just want them to work and be on time, be on task. This is an example, but this is close to a real situation. And they're good, right? It's not anything bad about them, but I wish that I could have them focus on their work rather than talking to each other. So one approach I could have is I can be super mad and I can be stressed out. I'm like, oh my gosh, these kids just don't listen. They don't work. All they do is talk. And I can let that fester in me. And eventually I can start to have a bad mood toward them, toward the class, toward my job, right? Those things could happen. If I shift my perspective, kind of like flipping a switch, and say maybe the challenge is I need to give them a higher level of engagement or find out a better way to refocus them, right? Kind of put the onus on myself. If you go back to that very first video I made about what you can control and what you can't, what things can I do to help them get on task? Maybe it's something that they can do together so that at least their talking is productive, right? That's just a reshifting of my perspective that can lower my stress level. Because now instead of feeling helpless and like these are just really bad kids who won't listen, I have now said, no, this is an opportunity for me to learn a different way to engage with these two students. Okay. And that's one way that you can kind of restructure in your mind the way you view something, and that can help reduce your stress greatly. All right. Oh, I love this chart so much. Okay. So the first emotional strategy, I've bolded the strategies so you kind of know which ones I'm talking about. Oh, excuse me. Coping with emotions. Okay. So here's the thing. The biggest, most important thing about coping with emotions is actually acknowledging them and accepting them. Sometimes, as a society, and this comes from earlier generations or just the way someone feels, we think, well, emotions are just, they're soft and they're silly and they're not productive. The fact is, they're real. Okay. They are programmed into us and they are there for a reason, right? And if you deny them, if you reject them, they actually don't go away. They just kind of welter up in you. And that's why sometimes people eventually have mental breaks because the part of their brain that is producing emotions is just suppressed so much, and eventually your brain has to stop and it just breaks, right? It breaks down, not literally, but it actually can cause dysfunction or lack of production in your brain because of suppression. So I love this chart. I want you to take this and remember this 4-step, it's really easy 4-step process. First, notice the feeling. Okay. If you're feeling super sad about something, notice that. Like, acknowledge, literally acknowledge, like, what is happening. My eyes are watering. My hands are shaking. I'm getting cold. I feel sick, right? Notice those things that happen when you are sad. The next thing to do is to name the feeling. I am sad right now. I am sad right now because. So take it a step further. Name the feeling and name the issue. I am sad because I can't see my students every day. I am sad because I miss going to work every day. Right? Name the emotion, name the feeling, and name what it is that's causing that. The third thing is to just sit with it, deal with it, let it happen. I used to be someone who was anti-emotion, and I was like hardcore, just got to keep working, keep being productive. And eventually this fall, actually, I just started to stop. And when I felt something, I would just let myself feel it. I would feel through it. Okay. Don't ignore it, go past it, but literally just let yourself feel it. If it's anger, be mad. Right? Don't forget to notice why you're like what's making you mad and what your body's doing when you're mad, and name the anger, then also just sit with it, because that allows you to get to step 4, just letting it go. Okay. Emotions come and go. That's their course. They are made to do that. When you stop them from processing, that is when it's harder to let them go. See, people that are hard and they're so, I don't feel emotion. Oh, they do. Okay, their bodies feel emotion, their brain processes emotions. They are just not releasing it. And sometimes what that looks like, especially in men, we can release that in anger. Okay, that can come out as anger. Sometimes in women, that can come as avoidance or hiding, like stepping away when we don't want to deal with the emotion or express it to someone. So it's really important that you follow those 4 steps to really let that life cycle of emotions happen. And then journaling is another good way to start this. I think if you are sitting at home and something happens and you're really mad about it, write it down. I am mad right now. I know I'm mad because, you know, whatever it is that happens in your body when you're mad, write that down. Like, I don't want to talk to anyone and I feel overwhelmed, and write those things down. Say why you're mad. I'm mad because, okay? Sit with that feel, just be mad. If it takes you 2 minutes, if it takes you an hour, just be mad. Let it happen. And parents, don't stop your kids from feeling through the emotion. Let them feel through it. Obviously, I know some parents want their kids to be productive with their emotion. That's fine, but wait till they felt through it to address how to actually be productive with that emotion, okay? If you want their anger to turn into problem solving, let them be mad first and then allow them, talk to them about how to solve the problem and be a model for them, right? If parents and adults do not model appropriate coping with emotions, then our kids will not know how to do it either. So this is a really, I know I spent some time on this slide because I think it's one of the most important things we can do. It's one of the best ways I've been able to manage my stress, and it's one of the easiest things that we can do. All right, this next one. Oh, look at my people. This strategy is obtaining emotional support and social support. So this is really just saying find some good, close, loving relationships that can help you through hard times. You can talk to them about anything, you can go to them about anything, and they can kind of be a support for you. So let me hover my little head over and talk about each of these people. So this is my best friend Garrett down there. He came to class last semester. Uh, Really close friend of mine in college. When I we ran for president and vice president of the campus together, and we've just been close ever since. He's always someone that I know I can lean on, call for advice, call to just feel through something. He actually taught me that the idea that it's okay to feel this range of emotions, and so he's always been a good support in my life. This is my mom in the middle and my sister Tiara. Obviously, my mom is just someone I can always call no matter what, and she'll always pick up. And then my sister Tiara, she's just full of wisdom, and she always seems to have the right answers when I need advice or I'm stuck on looking where to go. So she's one of my champions, and she helps me get through hard times. And then finally, my best friend Callie, who's wonderful. She's an accountant in Everett, and she's awesome, really funny. We've been friends since I maybe, well, she's older. Actually, she's younger, but she graduated first because she did a college credit in high school. But since my sophomore year of college, we worked together in our dorm, and we were RAs together, and then we kind of moved on from there, and we've still been friends ever since. And again, she's someone that, whenever I connect with her, it's just we're just right there, right? We're clicking, we're connecting, we're vibing, and so I'm really appreciative of all of these people because they help me through tough times. So, what I want you to do, another prompt, is to pause and just think of someone that you have a close relationship with. And what I want you to do is to reach out to them and remind them why it is that they're special to you. This can be a simple text. This doesn't have to be a long thing, but hey, I just wanted to let you know I really appreciate how you're always there for me when I'm sad. Or I just wanted to let you know that I'm really happy that whenever I need a late night pizza run or whatever, you're there for me. Doing that one little act, not only will it help that person get a nice little boost in their brain, right? They'll feel good. That neurotransmitter of dopamine will be released. It will come out, and they're like, "Oh my goodness, that's so sweet." But also, it will strengthen that bond that you have. And sometimes people don't know how much they mean to someone until we say it. And in times like right now, where we're kind of in isolation and social distancing, it's really important to reach out and connect. All right. This next strategy is using imagery that generates pleasant emotions. So, what is one way to counter negative emotions? Positive emotions. So, there's the three images that I've picked that I can think of that if I'm really down, I can look at these images and instantly there's positive emotions. So, this first one, if you recognize this, this is the old Issaquah like administrative center, the school district administrative center, and this is they call it a golden ticket, and basically it means no matter what, like you will get a job in the district somewhere. It's a teaching contract, and so I got this back in I think February or March, so it's like a year, which is kind of cool to think about. I didn't I wasn't working, like it wasn't saying you have a job at Issaquah High School. It was saying that you have a job with the Issaquah School District. So that's a photo that will always have positive emotions for me. This middle one is from college when I ran for president of the university. And this one makes me feel good for a lot of reasons. One, just I remember the feeling that I had in that moment of all the hard work that had been put in and being, that's Garrett. There's the back of his head there. You saw his face in the earlier slide, but just that feeling of fulfillment, that was really special. And that feeling, right? Remember when we talked about our amygdala and hippocampus and how they remember emotional moments, or they remember how we dealt with things? This is a time where my hippocampus said, "You will never forget." And my amygdala said, "You will never forget how you felt that night. We are not ever going to let you forget the emotions, the joy, the just euphoria that you felt when you've heard that you won that election." And it was really important to me, and we went on to do a lot of great work. And then this last one is game day. So if you watch game day during college football season, they go to a new town every week, and Pullman won it last year. Or they came to Pullman last year after a long time. You can see all the people down here at some point, and there's a stadium. Eventually, we filled that up. It was a great game. We beat Oregon. Oregon was like, I forget what they were ranked at that time, but they were ranked pretty high. That was a great season. But I can always look at Pullman and just, I'm even getting emotional now because it's such a special place to me, and I made so many good memories. See, I'm feeling through the emotion because I feel like joy sad, not sad sad, but I feel like joy tears coming. Um, eh, eh, it's just hard to put into words what my time at Washington State meant to me and the people I met, the experiences I had, and I can just look at this picture and feel uh, such peace and happiness, and all the memories just kind of flush. I got to move on before I start crying on this video. Um, Behavioral strategies. All right, good. So these next couple strategies are focused on behavior. So I found a really cool thing. If you Google relaxation skills for anxiety, University of Michigan, they have a PDF that talks about all these things that you can do to help with stress and anxiety. So it's really focused on modifying the stress response. So we talked yesterday about the different ways that we respond to stress, and relaxation strategies are meant to help you modify how you respond to them. Okay, so that's one example of a practice. Breathing, mindfulness, muscle relaxation, those are all types of things, or relaxation, those are all types of things that would you would do in relaxation skills. And so if you check out this resource, you can find some cool stuff and maybe try it out if that's something that works for you. For me, obviously, a picture of a football stadium seems to just do enough. So, depends on who you are, what you might need. All right, another one is avoiding the stressor. Okay, so I've put a little disclaimer here. And I said, beware, be cautious that this can be a really poor practice in some cases. Okay. Sometimes this can make it worse. And I'm going to use this as a classroom moment. And I want you to, if you're with someone, discuss times when you think avoidance can make problems worse. And if you're not with someone, you can either write this in our Google Classroom on the March 25th response, or you can write it down on paper or email me or put it in the comments below. I don't care, somewhere. But talk about when are times do you think that avoiding the stressor can actually make the situation worse? Because it is not always a good strategy. If you think back to when I said ignore and I talked about the kid who interrupted my class, that might be a good example of avoiding a stressor. But that may not always be a good tactic. All right, meditation. So some of you probably have already used meditation or have had experience with meditation. And this is really thinking about physiological control, okay? So how can you slow down some of your bodily systems? How can you focus? And when we get to the states of consciousness unit in Nature Nurture, we'll talk about all the different states of consciousness. The focus of this one is to push out external stimuli, so everything that we're hearing, seeing, feeling, right? Push those out and kind of bring in that inner focus. Meditation can be a great way to deal with stress, obviously, because you're taking back control of your mind, your body, and how you feel, and taking control of the situation. There's some apps that I put here as some possible things you can use. Headspace is one I've heard of. Calm I've used before and I really like. Insight Timer, and then for family, since you're most of you are together now, if you look up Go Noodle Flow, I'm really hope somebody does this because I want to know how you like it. They have like these cool little videos and activities that you can do with your family, and that will help you. It focuses on mindfulness and meditation, so you should give that a shot and let me know what you think about it. And then physical. So this is the last couple strategies. So for physical, you can think of aerobic exercise, and this can help alleviate depression and anxiety. And I think this would be a really great assignment activity if we had the time. But what I'm going to do is just pose a question to you, and this is mostly for nature nurture. So social psych, if this is like foreign to you, that's okay. But use what you know about the connection between biology and psychology and tell me why you think exercise might be able to help with stress and anxiety. And if you don't know anything about the connection between biology and psychology, maybe you're in social psych and we haven't talked about that and we won't. Maybe take some guesses about how you think the connection, like where you could see a connection between exercise and the way your brain feels. And I'll give you a hint. Part of it has to do with neurotransmitters. And then we have diet and nutrition, which is eating balanced meals and making healthy choices. I provided an article here that I think you should read. It's called "Nutritional Psychiatry and Your Brain on Food." So it's a health article from Harvard, and it talks about the connection between our brains and the food that we eat. And I think it's really important to educate yourself on this topic so that you can be making good choices and that you'll feel better. And again, another hint: it involves neurotransmitters. All right. So finally, this is as we think about this, the way you should view coping with stress and really anything is a whole person approach. So when you think about yourself, you should think of yourself as one connected system, biological, psychological, and social. Okay. So the things that are happening in your body are connected to the things that are happening in your brain, and that is connected to the way that you engage with people in the world. All right. So those are all intertwined. We study those separately sometimes, but in reality, all of them impact each other. Okay, and it's important to think when you're trying to address social problems that you understand the psychological and the biological. It's one of the reasons why I'm probably a little more compassionate than I used to be, is because now when I see a behavior or someone does something, I have the context to think about, okay, what is the psychological and social behind it that might be causing this behavior? What happened in their childhood that might be leading them to behave this way, or what about their social environment is causing them to act this way, right? We think of all of these areas, and you have to think of them like a system, integrated system, and one does not function without the other. If we think about a healthy lifestyle, controlling eating, smoking, exercise, and problem solving, all of those things have a direct impact on your perceived stress and stress level. Now, notice perceived stress suggests that you can change your perception of stress, and you can, right? Some people can handle stress really well because their perception is really strong. There's so many times where I've gone over to Miss Howland's room and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this just happened! I can't believe it!" And she's like super calm and just like, "Oh, just get, move on." And I'm like, "What?" But it's about shifting your mindset, prioritizing what's important, what really matters, and bringing yourself to a state of being able to notice the emotion, name the emotion, feel the emotion, and let it go. Okay? If you remember those four steps, I think you'll be all right. Okay, so a reflection for you is I want you to try to create a toolbox of coping strategies, okay, that can help you deal with stress. So, of all the things that I've talked about today, you can even look up some other ones, but maybe write down or make a note or an Excel spreadsheet of, hey, these are things that I can actually use. And I'd love it if you'd share it in the comments here or in the Google Classroom and say, I learned or I can use this strategy, the ignore strategy for this stressor because it will help me deal with it better. Or I think I might try out meditation to deal with this thing. All right, just let me know if any of the strategies that I talked about today can help with the stressor that you're dealing with right now. I'm happy to be engaging with you again. More videos to come. I think tomorrow I'll talk about the impact of social isolation because I think it ties well to what we're talking about with stress and our body's response. So I look forward to engaging with you soon.